Before I start, I want to say, usually I'm not very nervous for these things, but Deacon Pedro is here, and Deacon Pedro happens to be my father. Yeah. And he didn't tell me he was coming. I saw his list on the thing, so now I gotta thread carefully. No, I'm just kidding. He's an amazing human being. He knows me and how I am, but yeah, that's my dad, and I'm happy to be here. Happy to have him here. I wouldn't be here without him. So let me say a couple of words. We're gonna spend time connecting with each other as we do in these gatherings. The Yesterday I sat in ceremony, I held ceremony, healing ceremony for a Jewish couple. And this happened many years ago, a tragedy happened in their lives, a very painful one, which is the first year of marriage, she got pregnant. And at 8.5 months, they lost that baby. And those of us, you don't have to be a parent to understand how devastating that is. And I was so moved by a number of things. First, they did not cook for themselves once in 6 months, not one meal. They did not have to cook one meal for themselves in 6 months of deep grief. They were allowed to cry, and they cried, and they cried, and they cried, and they were held in those tears. They came here with having two healthy boys, facing another period of hardship, not as bad. That's why they needed some support. But they understood something very clear to me. They held in their bodies, in their being, in their turning towards ceremony, the wisdom on the other side of grief. I often say that the human heart is made to break. There is something tragic to this existence. But it is also made to heal. It breaks, and if we keep it open, it grows in that process. And there's many ways to go about being human. I often speak about living life on life's terms and how important of a discovery that has been for me. And when I talk about life's terms, I speak of the 5 Buddhists, to bring another religion in, remembrances. We're of the nature to die, and we cannot escape death. We are of the nature to get old, and we cannot escape old age. We are the nature to get sick, and we cannot escape sickness. Everything that is dear to us is subject to change and will change. All will be lost. We are subject to the consequences of our actions. These things are inevitable. These are the things that we live in fear of. We live in fear of something that will definitely happen, right? And so to release the fear about this thing that we can't fight, right? There are ways to do that. Not all of those ways are religious ways, but many religions come about to help us find those ways. There was a period of time through most of human history where we didn't have anything we called a religion. It was a time that is understood as animism, which is can feel derogatory, like people thought spirits existed, you know? Modernity disenchanted the world. I always say that we all come from a people that understood that the river has a spirit and the mountain has a spirit. That when a bird flies above, it means something. That if you talk to a tree and you're patient enough to listen, it will speak back to you. That's what every single human being upon this earth comes from that. And that was often held in very tight tribes. Many, many, many tribes. If you ask what their name means, it means human or the people. And many times we like to romanticize it, but many times that meant those other people are not, you know. We've done a lot of warring. And so something happened during the what we call the axial age, where the tribe could be expanded, right? More broadly to include more people. That's not where all religions come from, but that's like a big movement in the major world religions. And all of these things we know can and have been manipulated uh, to subvert people, to dominate people, um, to mediate between God or the ineffable and people. And at the same time, they produce these structures that people seem to be coming back to. Some people seem to be coming back to. It seems to be something that is happening in our culture. Looking at my notes here. A big thing that, like I already implied, that religion does is it allows us to turn towards the tragic with tools that make us wise instead of rejected, angry at reality, living with resentment towards life itself, filling ourselves up with fear and a desire to control the uncontrollable. Again, this can be just spirituality. It doesn't have to be religion. But there are these traditions that hold wisdom uh, that helps us do that. In some cases, the turn towards religion is a quest for certainty, a kind of certainty that doesn't really exist, that closes possibility instead of open, that excludes instead of include, right? And so there's a way in which we are so anxious to just know. Basically, many people say that there's some studies say it's all about fear of death. Like what's gonna happen after? You know, how do I define it? And again, this is not all religions, but there's something about like how this other world, other than this one, that often takes us out of the embodied experience of aliveness. I grew up in a religious community where people had the great intention of bringing up their families in a particular Christian practice. And you've heard me write and speak about how much of that was beautiful and how much of that was hurtful. And I was going to say this whether my dad came or not, but we were in Mexico recently. We visited the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and there was something miraculous to being there with these two people, my parents, who have this absolute faith. And the people there that have this total faith. And we were talking, my father and I were talking, and 45 years since that community was founded, and the old timers are still around. And he says, I feel like we are living the body of Christ. I feel like that's what it was meant when Christ said he would come back, how we are living together. I saw another elder by coincidence because Father's Day was also the anniversary of the community. So by coincidence, I ended up going to this anniversary, and I saw an elder, a founder, beautiful, tall, black Puerto Rican man. And my mother introduced him to my son as, oh, this is one of the founders. She said, no, I'm not the founder, God is the founder. God used me. Then me and him had a one-on-one. And he asked me about how I was doing, and I told him how much I love God, and I didn't get into how different it is than the way we were taught. And he said to me, as long as you live in love with God, you will be showered with grace. And this meant the world to me because I know what his family has been through. They have lost a child, right? Some of their children are having a hard time. They've been hit by life's terms. And nevertheless, there's something in this man that says, I have been showered with grace. That's moving to me, whatever the religion is. A dear friend of mine, maybe some years younger than me, white man, just recently turned to Islam. And I gotta tell you, like being part of our community and our ecosystem, um, that's the last thing I expected. And he seems to be doing better than ever. I just saw him on Saturday. And I also just saw Reel from like a queer um, influencer who I follow. And she was talking about going back to church, right? A faith that she had felt excluded from because she was queer. And she's just like, this is what I am. This is what I am. I am all of these things. But she had to explain it, right? And she was, I'm sorry, it's he prefers he or they. And they had to explain it because they were concerned about, how people would take it. To this day, in the social movements that I'm a part of, many people belong to religious movements. Many people belong to the Black church and other churches and other religions, the Jewish faith for sure. There's engaged Buddhism. There are all kinds of ways that people are staying with what feels often like a contradiction and finding ways to express their spirituality religiously, right? So we're talking about religion, and that's different from the spiritual but not religious. Though you are welcome and wanted here if that's what you are, right? This is an open conversation for whoever's here and however you're coming into this. So I wanted to ask, what do you think people are actually hungry for when they return to religion? What do you think? Are they hungry for God, for belonging, for moral clarity? Are they hungry for ritual, for discipline, for beauty, tradition, for mystery? Are they hungry for accountability? Are they hungry for something that is harder to name? Might they just be looking for certainty in a world that will never provide it, right? Might they be just looking for safety that tightens them up and gives you a lot of these terrible fundamentalisms that from all angles that are shaping our culture. So my invitation is to get into a brief conversation with each other about that. Most of us here are in community together, in some kind of community together. And so we know that we have fostered a culture of open-hearted listening, of attunement, of leaning into the wisdom in the space that is alive between us. So when we get into these groups, practice that with great intention. Listen as if in your listening, somebody can discover something deeper about what they believe. Don't speak to assert. Stay in an open-hearted inquiry and see what becomes possible. We'll give you about 12 minutes together. We'll tell you when time is up, when you're halfway through, so that you make sure that the person that's hogging the microphone drops it, that kind of thing. You can also ask the person to stop talking gently and lovingly, but clearly. I do it for a living and it works. So welcome back, gorgeous people. Those groups were bigger than I intended them to be. Hector, who's assisting me while Nicole is in maternity leave, found out today that he was managing a Zoom call, which he has never done. So we all wish him, just let him know that there's no screwing this up. We're all friends here. Like, it's all good. I've been having a hard time bringing his anxiety down, but maybe seeing your smiles will help. Taking a moment here just to invite you, so as those of you that work with me know that I don't do report outs. Report outs are boring. I'm inviting your own subjective take, your opinion, your thoughts on what you heard. More than your opinion, right? What you sensed, what you felt, what you're tuning into here. So that means that when you're not representing the group, it's how you're making sense of the group. So when you're done, You don't have to say to your peers, did I get it right? Right? Because that's not what you're doing. You're speaking from yourself. What came up for you as you listened? So I would love to get a couple of voices in. And I think we're small enough to just unmute. And if it gets too rowdy, we'll do a wave of hands. I saw you on mute, Father. Did you mean to? We can't hear you. ¿Está hablando?
No,
¿Quiere hablar?
lo estoy pensando.
Okay, but keep muted. Let's keep Elena.
I just heard you unmute, so
I
I'm
understand. I got you, no problem. Okay, Elena, come on.
Well, first of all, I was with a beautiful group. Thank you all that were in my group. And I think that one of the themes was that people are returning to religion because of the times we're living in.
Mhm.
And speaking for myself, I said that that's really the way to go as long as we're not looking for definite answers, right? And then Rabbi David said something very beautiful, which is all religions talk about a path, the Tao, the path, like there's this sense of like getting on a journey, like you're not there yet, but you get on a journey. And in an expansive way of understanding religion, because it's just across all those faiths. The idea that it's not about living a happy life where everything is worked out, but it is about the way, the Tao, the path, the practice, right? To make sense and to grow and mature. And Marianne was in my group as well. It's like, yeah, just because you believe in God doesn't mean that everything becomes easy all of a sudden. But you get to experience, that sense of surrender to something bigger than yourself. So, this act of leaving your tiny little thing, your tiny little concerns, and connecting with something way bigger than you, whether it's like ancestors, whatever it is, right? So anyway, so that's a little bit of what I caught from my group, but it was way deeper than that.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you. And thank you for the beautiful spirituality that you hold. Um, we'd love to hear one or two more. Just feel your heart.
Something that I was hearing in our group was that regular space of showing up and being in practice, being with others, and the regularity of that, like a weekly practice where you come and you just, with whatever is there for you, you are showing up, and that continues to then create that space of who you are being there, and have submitting to that as a regular practice and ritual.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It keeps time, right? It keeps our time together in this beautiful way. I um I was laughing earlier when my dad was on the phone. I'm like, well, now you see where I get it from. Um, but I'm reading this. I just finished reading this beautiful book, a Christian book actually called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it says just like you cannot have space for the divine living at the pace of capitalism. And one of the things he was doing was reminding Christians that they're also supposed to actually observe the Sabbath, like to like actually do a real Sabbath. And that's something that I am very interested in actually bringing into my life. I would love to hear from at least one more voice before we go into the next come together.
I can jump in. I think the thing that, as I reflected on the conversation, came up for me most is just how certainty has multiple sides of it, and that there, for me, like just speaking for my own grappling with uncertainty has been a part of why I have turned towards religion, and that there's also like a danger of the fact that you can like seek certainty, which I have been unlearning for some time now that that doesn't work for me. But just that the certainty piece of it can be a beautiful part of it if it's part of how you're grappling with the uncertainty of, and learning that. But it also, I think, can be a danger zone.
Yeah.
And it can be part of also what pushes me away from religion at times when I get analytical about it and I think about the like patterns through history of like when does religious practices rise? You can map that onto fascism, other things. So it's just like intention, but that like for me, centering the grappling with uncertainty is like how I come back home.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. You and I have shared a quote from Elizabeth Gilbert. You think you're giving up control, but all you're giving up is anxiety, right? And like from the 12 steps, faith is the opposite of fear, right?
Mm.
And faith means no matter what. It's not faith that everything's gonna turn out hunky dory. It's like whatever it is, I live in faith. I'm glad you went to that because that was the next question. Is like, what do you do? What have you tried? How has it worked? Right. So let me just look at my notes here. So there is like, we know people turn work into a religion, right? Like that definitely happens. We know we can get into wellness practices, right? Instead of religion, it's not religion. It's actually a way in which we're trying to meet that need, right? It could be therapy, right? All of these can be good, you know. Music is as a religious experience. People are turning to astrology, which is pretty cool and interesting. There is psychedelics that become religion, right? It's just like political communities, right? You've heard me talk in other contexts about the Church of Social Justice. There are all kinds of things that we do, and I just remember just catching myself, thankfully, after some good therapy, noticing that I thought that if I did enough good in the world, it was subconscious. If I worked hard enough, if I worked doing good, if I meditated enough, if I exercised and ate well, if I did all of these things well, then maybe I would get a pass on life's terms, right? Maybe it would be this contract where the worst wouldn't happen, right? And so it's just like to release that, to let go of that and practice from a different place, a place of surrendered acceptance. It's a powerful thing, but we reach for these things. We reach for it, and in many ways, and they serve us well in many ways, and in some ways, they come up short. And so the invitation is to reflect on that with each other, with the same care, with the same compassionate and passionate curiosity, right? As if you can grow from what you're listening to, as if the space between you has a wisdom that is greater than any of you. So let's just talk about this together. The question is on the chat, and we'll have smaller groups this time. Welcome back, beautiful people. Let's bring the intimacy of the small group to the large group. Let's bring that connection forward. Like people here are good because they are. Before I ask you to share what is coming up for you, right? As you listen. Hector, I dropped a bomb on Hector today, right? About the Zoom thing. Hector's been helping me while Nicole is on maternity leave. Hector just dropped a bomb on me. He was invited to the Vatican to talk about the intersection of AI and religion, and he's going. So we're dealing with serious business over here. That's amazing. I didn't know. I had no clue. No clue. I was like, my dad hasn't gone to the Vatican, you know. Okay, friends. Let's take a moment and just reflect back. Like, what has worked in this effort to meet this need? What hasn't? Where are you? Or where are you? Or where do you think we are based on what you heard? Go ahead, Marianne.
I was struck in the conversation in my small group, and as I reflected back over these years, how when formal religion lost its way
Mhm, mhm,
uh, in the last century, and people fled and felt lost and all of that, kind of the creativity of the spirit,
mm,
because the search for God, the search for the experience of the divine is so powerful that even the things you listed, Gibran, which seem, maybe uh too quote unquote shallow, like, but they're cultural, they're this, but they're people were creating something for themselves within which to thrive and to grow
mhm,
spiritually.
mhm.
And that's lonely. I mean, you're finding the people that you can connect with, but everyone, and I think maybe the draw back to the collective is having been out in the wilderness, each of us finding our way and, um, experimenting and doing everything we can to become closer and have an experience of the divine. What we long for, I keep thinking about the Knicks and the World Cup. We long for that collective joy. We long to celebrate with one another collectively in that sort of way. And maybe
Mm.
that's why people are going back to quote unquote religion and church and
Yeah, yeah,
all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Marianne. That's beautiful, and yeah, I mean, you have a beautiful story in your own journey. We won't cover it here today. Um, but yeah, actually, I'll send you all a link. Marianne is featured in a podcast called Divine Intervention, a Peabody Award-winning podcast about the Catholic left and the war in Vietnam. Absolutely beautiful. And her journey back to the church has just been absolutely moving to witness. Marianne is my beloved elder and friend. I'd love to hear at least one more, maybe two before the next one. At least one. Just tune into your heart.
Gibran, I'm sitting with this like I'm a little bit crosswise to your questions in some way.
Great.
And coming at it from from just my particular lens of being clergy and sort of being deep in it, right? So sort of that's the the warning. And what came up actually as Marianne was talking was Brene Brown's sort of this dichotomy of in the individual and the collective, and the thing that the individual expression that we and that we want to and should share in our lives, and then the collective responsibility and the pieces that we need to sort of like hem in
Yeah.
To belong, right?
Amen.
And there's something really, I think there's a swing
Mhm.
that we're overcorrecting for. And and to be clear, like the data that the podcast was referring to is like it's not like a
Yeah.
revival, right? It's a pause in the decline,
Yeah.
which is very different.
Yes, sir.
But it's a correction, and a lot of the things that you mentioned are sort of like have capitalism sort of underneath them, like work and wellness and and
Mhm.
all of those pieces.
Yeah.
But so it's like a correction to collectivism, and that's what I see in my
Mhm.
life, is that people are wanting to, like, in these times, like, step into like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this in small groups, we're going to do this together, we're going to have a strong basis of collective agreements.
Uh-huh.
And that's what religion, what Judaism has been to me. I hesitate to talk about all religion
Right.
because
Yeah.
many people talk about all religion, and what they're really talking about is Christianity and the sort of Christian hegemony framework that we also live in. But in my particular path, it's felt like there's some things, there's we talk about the sort of taking on the yoke of heaven, and there's a responsibility there. There's a responsibility of to each other and to to the collective. And in that responsibility, there's limits, right? There's strictures. There's like, I'm not going to eat pork, even though I lived in Spain for a year and a half, and that jamón sevillano is is the bomb. And and the Sabbath is central to my existence, right? It's like the way that it orients the rest of my week. And so it's like, it's this interlocking, and I guess the one last piece that I want to say is that it's because has a long history, and it's worn smooth by many, many, many people.
Yeah.
Right? There's a depth and longevity to it that following a guru or the latest wellness influencer or what have you naturally has a limitation to it, because it's just one human being that sort of created their thing. Whereas it's again, at least in my tradition, it's like millennia of people that have been arguing about what is the best way, and really sort of and creating the depths of, it's bottomless,
Yes.
right, of tradition to sort of lean into and wrestle with and argue against. And that's also part of my faith path, right, is the tussling and wrestling and back and forth, which I know is not necessarily a Christian thing.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
So,
Thank you
anyway,
so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your question and no, your comment. Really appreciating your naming. The data was pretty weak, actually. Somebody else sent me a note. I said this is still a pretty good conversation to have, but you're right. Like, it's not. It's overstated. It's overstated. And I also want to say, just from knowing you personally, like, yeah, you have this way of like keeping your faith so in such integrity, and yet so open, right? It's so open. And I think that's what happens. A lot of people don't know how to do that, right? Or a lot of sects or subgroups of the same tradition don't know how to do that. And in not doing that, it just goes back to the not us, not you. And I never even had the slightest scent of that from you, And like that's part of, I think, that really helps us transition into the next question, which is let me see here. Is it possible? And of course, you are evidence. My father's evidence. A lot of people here are evidence. Is it possible to recover the gifts of religion without reproducing the harms? What would have to be true for that to happen, right? And just to remind us, like, this one might get a little, some tension might arise, because there is a lot of very real trigger, a lot of very real. I mean, it is happening right now. Like, Christian nationalism is rounding up brown bodies, and right. It's just that it's this one's a hard one, right? Because then somebody else is like, well, wait a minute, that's my faith, and I hold it, and you talk, right? And so it's just like this complications, right? So here, like, really stay open and curious, and we're not seeking agreement. We're not seeking agreement. We're just tuning into where we are together. Okay, so I'm gonna get you back into your groups, and we'll see you for the close. So again, bringing the intimacy of the small group. I imagine this was a more sensitive one. There's a lot of harm that has been caused by religion. So some of us are weary of it. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna talk about me right now. Curious to know uh, what you heard, what you're sensing from that conversation. Again, we may get one or two voices in, so don't be too hesitant to bring what your heart wants to say.
Mm.
I'll share something that seemed to resonate in the group. So there are gifts and hurts,
Yeah.
and finding our way, or each person has their own journey with that. But yeah, finding an acceptance of that has been important for me. And one of the things that I've been reflecting on in this conversation connects to the question Eli had asked before that breakout, which is like, what is religion? I think that my understanding of it came up in my reflection on this question because this mystic Dorothy Soli, a 20th century German American theologian, helps identify three manifestations of religion. One is the institutional, which in the Christian tradition is like the church. Another is the academic, which is like the theology, the doctrine, the dogma. And then the third is the mystical, which is the personal experience of the divine. And what I found really helpful in that is that I was able to articulate my journey right now is I've played with the institutional and I've learned the academic, and I'm in a moment where in my own healing journey, like I'm accessing spirituality and religion through the mystical, through this expression of religion. And that's where a lot of the gifts are. And even if you look at how the mystics confronted the institutions of their own time, shifted the teachings in their own ways,
Yeah.
there's a lot of gift in that space.
That is absolutely beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And mystics were often persecuted too, right? For daring in that
Yes.
way. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you for bringing that in. Uh, Forgive me, not just you, but the couple of people that asked if you felt unclear. I think that podcast was why people returning to like church, I think, right? Um, and my intention here was to talk about the institutional version. That's kind of how I was coming at it, and maybe that should have been clarified up front. Um, if someone can be brief, because I want to do a good close together in the last 2 minutes. Um, I would love to get one more voice in here. I will interrupt you though.
I think I can be brief.
Yes.
I think I can do it. I was raised in the Catholic tradition. I was an evangelical. I left because I was like, this is messed up. And then I found myself like I organize nuns to give their land back now. And I'm generally like I've organized my life to like bring integrity to this tradition that I think has gone wrong without identifying with it. And someone pointed out to me like I think that's like what being isn't like fighting for the gospel and the ostracized mystics teaching about this. Like, isn't that what it is? I was like, shit. So, um, I think the question of like, is it possible? Is it possible to recover the gifts of religion without reproducing the harms? I don't actually know.
Mhm,
I think a lot of people on this call are called to try
mhm.
to explore that question. And I feel clear, and I don't think this is for everybody in the world, but like my job is to try and
Yes.
without knowing,
Mm,
without knowing.
amen. Oof, let's pause there. Let's just kind of receive that together. Yeah. What a better way to try anything, right? Without knowing. Without knowing. If that's not faith, I don't know what is.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for showing up. I welcome notes, emails, further thinkings, challenges. All of that is welcome. Audio, voice memos. Anyway, you want to stay in the conversation. Um, Saint Francis used to say, "Let's go out and preach the gospel. We'll only speak if we have to." you know, and that seems like a good way to be. Just good people, people that carry the songs and the wisdom that have been sung throughout the ages, that believe in ritual. I'm going to invite you to take a moment and get yourself back into gallery view, just so we can see all our faces. And just take a look at the eyes here. Take a look at these faces like they are beautiful, like they're good, like they are often lost and vulnerable, anxious and depressed, alone, and like they also know joy and they have courage. Like we're in something together, whatever way we're taking. Like whatever pulled us here, keep pulling us in the right direction. Let's continue to honor our yes. Taking a moment now to like go beyond the individuals and feel the space alive between us. It has its own aliveness, its own quality. This is where emergence arises from. The endless creativity of the divine. The wisdom of the ancestors. The long song, the long story. We remain here together in the middle of forever. May you be blessed. May your families be blessed. May your labor be blessed. May your friends be blessed. May we together stay in the path of wisdom. Ashe. Ashe. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bendiciones para todo el mundo, like Bad Bunny says.
Thank you, Gibran.
Gracias,
Thank
Pati.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you.
Blessings,
you.
friends.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Gibran.
Thank you. Thank you.